I think we're pretty much probably safe now to get started. I appreciate both of you getting on the call with me. Fletcher, we were talking about talent attraction and how do we get the best talent attraction out there and how do we get the data we need for knowing what content we should put out there, how we should reach out to people. And then I appreciate you bringing up Noah's name for the sake of what he could do with analytics, the testing employees and whatnot, how that came back around to give us more ammunition to be able to attract people and go after people and really be able to help with the culture on there. But just so who the audience knows who you are, Fletcher, would you mind introducing you and your company, and Noah, would you mind going too?
Yeah, Mike, you kind of preface this, right? Is we wanted to bring Noah into this conversation because he is the employee engagement guru. And maybe we're making some assumptions here, but as talent acquisition experts, and maybe even HR, and maybe even as leaders, CEOs, or other leaders within business, maybe we don't always connect the dots between how employee engagement plays a huge role in our ability to attract and engage A players or ideal candidates in the hiring process and how linked those two concepts really are, right? That's what we're going to explore today and some best practices in both areas, employee engagement, but also how to then take those best practices or learnings or findings and apply them to the talent acquisition process to supercharge it. Frankly, it's like a chicken and egg problem. Poor employee engagement leads to poor talent acquisition efforts or results potentially, and really does. Vice versa, great engagement leads to stronger talent acquisition, right? So is that a good tee up for you guys?
Yeah, and I know if you explain a little bit about your company and give us a little bit into that as far as analytics go, then I've got some questions I want to throw out to both of y'all.
Sure. Mike Fletcher, great to be here. To the audience, thanks for participating. My name's Noah Pusey. I'm the president and CEO of Ripple Analytics. We follow engagement, we drive engagement, employee engagement. To Fletcher's point, strong engagement can lead to strong talent acquisition, but more importantly, from my perspective, is strong talent acquisition. If you get the right people in the right chairs at the right jobs and the right responsibilities and engage those people, those are the people that you want to keep. And retention is an easy word to throw around. We're a firm believer at Ripple that you want to retain the right people, the good people. And if you lose some of the bad people, some of the disengaged people along the way, that's fine. And we do that through survey analytics. Ripple's a big proponent of surveying your people, seeing how they feel, seeing how they enjoy their experience or don't enjoy their experience, and then acting on that feedback. So but it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to a discussion on everything that Fletcher and I live and breathe every day.
Yeah, definitely. And in talent acquisition, I know it's been a matter of we take our engagement surveys or whatever surveys we have and try to build them in, but we really don't have a regular tool. The fact that somebody's come up with something that's not a disc survey or something that's 2 or 3 years old, I really like those capabilities you guys have here. But I think Fletcher talked about how the two kind of tie together, but can you share examples of successful initiatives or programs that have improved employee engagement?
Yeah.
You're asking for examples of programs or initiatives that the companies can implement? Yeah, as I said, short, regular, timely surveys are key to gathering the information, the data that then you can analyze as a leader. We don't often use the term managers in our platform only because a lot of managers don't really know how to manage. And when we talk about engagement numbers, it's important to remember that most managers are also employees. So when you look at, I'm going to talk about Gallup a lot today because they've been tracking data, employee engagement data for 25 years. Managers are employees. So when you look at 33% of employees are engaged domestically, that number applies to managers too. And it's 33% of managers are engaged. So when you're trying to have managers drive engagement when only a third of managers are actually engaged, engagement initiatives, feedback initiatives have to come from the very top, have to come from the C-suite, have to come from the leaders. Because again, and I'll beat this horse dead several times today, but 33% is the number. And 33%, give or take, has been the number for 25 years. At its height engagement in domestically is 36%. And in the last 15 years, the low is 30%. So you're really not moving the needle a whole ton in terms of engagement and disengagement. So it's key to really focus in on the employees that are engaged and find out why they're engaged and try to replicate it. And if you can get that engagement number to 40, 45%, maybe even 50%, you're killing it. Yeah. So when you talk about managers creating initiatives, those initiatives, getting that feedback has to be championed from the very highest level of leadership.
Yeah,
So
and I think we talked earlier, a week or two ago, about removing the word mandatory out of
Hmm.
these to help them. Actually, removing mandatory increases participation. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Sure, Fletcher, do you want to talk about that or do you want me to?
no, go ahead. No, that's
Yeah,
you.
so mandatory, anytime you have mandatory should be for filing your taxes. You have any mandatory initiative. I'm a recovering lawyer, and way back when we used to have mandatory happy hours at a firm I worked at, my second job. And the concept of having a mandatory happy hour, just look at the three words. If I have to explain the insanity of having mandatory tied to something that's supposed to be enjoyable, what we believe is most employees want to give feedback. Most employees want their managers, leaders to know how they feel, even if it's negative. If you say it's mandatory, that means annual reviews. Yeah, we do not like the annual review at Ripple because the data you're using, unless you collect it throughout every month, every quarter, and it's accurate and it's dynamic, to have a 20-minute discussion once a year is silly. And a lot of companies do it because it's mandatory. It's a compliance exercise. It's a check the box. If you can't point to anything that's coming out of it that's positive, why are you doing it? When we researched and started road mapping our platform, we found that 70% of HR professionals don't think the annual review is an effective way of providing feedback to your employees. 7-0. So why are you doing it? Just get rid of it and do something that's more timely, more actionable, and do it regularly and have meetings as they are needed. And if you have to have 4 meetings in a week, have 4 meetings in a week. If you have to have one meeting every 3 months because your team is awesome and productive and efficient, that's fine too. But having mandatory Monday 2 p.m. meetings is a thing of the past.
I guess to jump from mandatory to leadership, and this is for both of you guys for you to answer, but what steps can you get organizations to ensure like alignment between organizational goals, employee engagement, and then getting that back to talent attraction? What kind of steps do you see that are to get that alignment?
Yeah, I'll pick this up because I think what Noah's doing, encouraging regular feedback, it's encouraged. And we want to create a culture of regular feedback. And by making it easy, making it an engaging process to participate in, an encourage but not mandatory process, and then leaning into your highly engaged people to be really championing it. So those are the people who are going to drive the best results. And then they're going to rub off on everybody else. So just pick up on some of those things there, Noah. Now, the next thing's happening here is you're beginning to collect stories and feedback, right? Little by little. And these stories and these feedback loops that you're getting begin to help you tell a story in the talent acquisition space. So I would hope that many people here have thought about the concept of your employer value proposition. And so that's what this is. This is fuel for your employer value proposition. It not only feels, if you haven't created one or you're trying to recreate it or redo it, this is the initial kindling that you're going to leverage. So pull these stories out, pull these statements, pull these testimonials that Noah's collecting, pull the stats like, hey, our employee engagement was 30% and now it's at 40%. That's a 35%, 33% improvement in our employee engagement. That's a story. And here's why, because so-and-so said this, so-and-so said that, and they cited this change in leadership. So now you're extracting hard data that's supported by real testimonials live on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis. And you're pumping that right back into your employer value proposition. And then you're keeping your content fresh from a recruitment marketing perspective. So how often are we refreshing our advertisement content, our social content, or the content that we use to share in our employee referral programs, which is my favorite? Or how well are we leaning into our 30 or 40% highly engaged people? Like those are the people who are going to drive the best referrals. So we're identifying who those people are, and we can tap into those, again, leaning into our best players, not our worst players, and spending our time with people who are totally disengaged, totally checked out, which are probably also underperforming, right? We're leaning into the good versus spinning our wheels with the bad, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think one of the key components to aligning organizational goals with employee engagement is realizing the ROI on employee engagement. Employee engagement should be a primary organizational goal because engaged companies, teams, individuals, they're 23% more profitable, 18% more productive, 81% less absent mental and physical from the office. Those are the numbers I share when I'm pitching to C-suite. I say, if those numbers don't raise an eyebrow or two, if that doesn't create incentive to have an organizational goal be employee engagement, because employee engagement is something that is contagious. You can have those kind of gray area employees that aren't quite disengaged, but aren't engaged and they're influenced. Engaged employees are more positive. They're more proficient in bringing disengaged employees over to the light side, the good side, the productive side, the profitable side. So yeah, aligning goals with engagement is driving engagement in and of itself. And
And the
again,
engaged people are having more fun.
engaged people are happier, they're
Yep.
more self-aware, they're more loyal, they stick around longer. And we pivoted about 6, 7 months ago. We saw the light in terms of Gallup's data. All the attention on disengagement. Disengagement costs domestic companies $550 billion a year, right? Huge numbers.
Yeah.
And yet, engagement surveys, the Q12, and Gallup doesn't like me when I talk about this stuff, it really hasn't moved the needle. So over the last 10 years, with all of this focus on how do we get rid of disengaged employees, it really hasn't changed much. So don't forget about the disengaged. Don't ignore the disengaged, but certainly praise, celebrate, acknowledge the engaged employees. Because when we talk about retention, you talk about you want to retain the right people. You don't want a good person leaving. Chances are they're going to go to a competitor. You want to retain the key people that makes your organization what it is.
And
Oh,
and
definitely.
and again, I think that leans into talent acquisition. Those are the people who are way more likely to make an A player referral. And again, those are the people that we can cultivate and encourage to be active participants in our employee referral programs. And employee referral programs are the single best source of new hires, period. And I doubt there's anybody on this call that hasn't experienced it firsthand. The people who are referred in, there's a crazy stat, like 87% of those people are considered good to great by their managers. And those people are automatically more engaged as they come into the organization. They stay engaged longer. They're having more success in their roles, are happier working in those companies. So they're just, light years above and better quality hires. And I'll get out ahead of this. Every once in a while, I have a naysayer and they say, we hired this referral and they didn't work out. So what? Get over it, because the vast majority of them are amazing. So stop worrying about, again, the 10% and worry about the phenomenal and that contagion that you talked about, right? That's how you build momentum, not worrying about the bad. You worry about the good and feel the good, and great things begin to really happen. And yeah, it takes time.
Yeah, and I think we can engagement by an organization measured by the surveys and putting those in place. People, if you survey them, they feel like you care a little bit more than never hearing from that, especially if it's a top-down type of, hey, I want y'all to participate in this. I can tell you from experience in different size companies, when I've had survey come from the top down, the engagement was 70, 80% because they did it. They made their managers do it, their leaders do it, and then obviously a push down there. But in putting those things together, this one probably goes to you more first, is can you give me an example of the initiatives or engagement programs, whatever you guys have had that's went into place that worked? And then secondarily, did any of those tie really well into talent attraction? But what successful initiatives or programs have you seen that's worked for organizations? And something that would be for this audience that could be a 100-person company or a 10,000-person company?
Yeah. So engagement's interesting. Within the survey analytics world, we love our questions, we love our surveys, we love the data we're trying to get so we can analyze and build initiatives around the feedback. But really, if you want to test the levels of engagement in your company, you just have to see who participates in the survey process. It's not uncommon for new users of our platform to experience 35, 40% participation levels. And while it's a little shocking to the team that brought us in, the team leaders that brought us in, I remind them that Gallup says that 33% of all domestic employees are engaged. And so if you have 35% participation, that's right in line with that. What are you going to do to make that number 60%, 65%? Because if you expect 100%, you're always going to be disappointed. If you expect 95%, you're always going to be disappointed. We've had 92% participation levels, but it's an outlier. So when we give you your first results saying you have 100 employees, 35 people actually completed the surveys, I ask the leaders, yeah, okay, so we've got to work on completing surveys, but more importantly, what are you doing to 65 of your people that decided not to do what you asked them to do? And this is a good thing. This is supposed to be a positive thing. And you ask 100 people to fill out these surveys so that managers can act on real information and data. And yet only 35%, and I'll tell you, and I've done this with clients. Is Fletcher an engaged person? Yes. He completed his surveys within the first day. Is Mike an engaged person? Yes. Well, okay, because he completed his surveys within 2 hours of getting the link. Is Noah an engaged person? No, not really. Okay, I could have guessed that because Noah hasn't completed his surveys yet. It's been 30 days. So we go through that list, and all I have to show them on their dashboard is participation levels. And that's a good starting point because getting into levels of commitment and conscientiousness and stuff we track is irrelevant. You want that 30,000-foot view of engagement before you dig down deep. And so when I show owners, and some of them, we've lost clients because they question the algorithms and they don't think that I'm giving them the accurate information. But when we show owners that are truly committed to the process, that all data is good. Bad data is good, data is better, obviously. But bad data allows you to take action to find out what the problem is. And so don't bury your head, do something about it. And I'll share a story. We have a client that they've got multiple offices. And I got an email from the president, and he was going to terminate somebody and had this person into his office and was basically starting the termination speech. And I think we shared this previously. No one likes firing someone. It's a horrible process. Even if the employee's not a good fit or toxic or not, just has to go. Terminating anyone, it stinks. So he's about to terminate this person, and she stops him and says, I've been looking at my data on my Ripple dashboard, and I just don't think I'm a good fit at this organization. So she proactively told her boss that she's going to move on. And so in a perfect world, that's exactly what the data should do. This isn't a good fit. Doesn't mean you're a horrible person. You've been here a few years. Go find something that makes you happy. Because if you're not happy here, everyone says it and says it too often, maybe sometimes, but it's true. Life is too short. You can do something somewhere else, and maybe the personalities in that different office are going to jive better with you. But that's a real life example of how Ripple can help HR, Ripple can help leadership, because other people realize from the data that one, either I love working with Fletcher, I love working with Mike, I love working with Sandy, I love working with Danielle, or maybe they all don't like working with me. And I'll also use an example of a salesperson that was a toxic salesperson on their team, but he was 150% a goal. And when they got the Ripple information, I'm talking to the SVP of sales, and he's like, what should I do with this guy? And I'm like, put him on an island. He can clearly sell your product, but no one likes working with him. Get him a WeWork office somewhere and isolate him. Have him come in once a month. But as a salesperson, he's awesome. As a coworker, he stinks. But use that data in real life situations and show your people that you're going to use the data in real life situations so they participate more. It's all circular. If you want people to give you data, you better use that data. Because if you don't use the data, they're going to be like, what's that exercise for?
Yeah, Barbara brought up a point here that's good. And again, talking about what initiatives and programs can work. The people are fearful of retribution that can be the driver to not complete engagement surveys.
Or just go middle of the road.
So you have to be able to put that in your initiatives, but how do you get an organization to mandate or get these initiatives that work in order to get the information so TA has something to work with. Is there examples of some other organizations that you were able to get initiatives put together so they could get above that? Say they were at 20, 25%?
I can weigh in a little bit on this. I think there's one very simple hack to moving the needle and increasing engagement. So the point is correct. So I think it's, and Noah, you hit this. So one point is absence or unwillingness to participate tells you almost everything you need to know. So everybody needs to keep that in mind, right? So if 90% of the people don't want to participate in this, we can begin to speculate why. It's probably because they have nothing nice to say. Probably they're disengaged. So now you know there's a problem. You might not know exactly what the problem is, but you know there's a problem, right? So now you can begin to take other actions. One very simple hack from a leadership perspective on how to begin to move the needle here are one-on-ones. And now everybody's going to cringe, right? One-on-ones. Oh, cringe, run another meeting. No, stop thinking that because you're crazy. No, it's how you conduct a one-on-one. A one-on-one is about the individual, not about the manager or the leadership's initiatives and what I'm trying to push down. That's a different meeting. That's a tactical meeting that you have in sales, setting sales goals, initiatives, whatever, operations, team meetings, whatever. That's a different type of meeting. One-on-ones are about 3 simple questions. Noah, what worked for you in the last week in the job? What didn't work for you? How can I help you? So it's about you, Noah. It's about what's working in your world at work, what's not working for you, and how can I be an assistance? And the fact of the matter is, maybe I can be an assistance. I can give you the right resources. I can give you some new tools. I can unlock some things, but it's probably more of a coaching moment to be able to say, hey, that's working for you, Noah. How can I help you lean into that? How can I encourage that? How can I give you more opportunities to be in what's working mode? And how can I help unlock or solve some of the things that aren't working for you? Again, that's a coaching moment, not a mandating moment. It's not a dictator moment. It's not I may not be able to, I can't physically make something that's not working for you work for you, but again, it's a coaching opportunity, and immediately that's going to begin over time. Again, these things take time. Begin to improve overall engagement that folks are going to have. Now, when the employee engagement survey comes around next month, next week, that person who's beginning to have a better relationship with their supervisor, who's feeling the ability to be more open and vulnerable because we've been having these open and vulnerable conversations, they're going to be able to begin to be more willing to participate in these types of activities. And then lastly, all of that's gathered is that information that's gathered is then again repurposed inside the talent acquisition. So the people who are hyper engaged, high performers, they're creating video testimonials and sharing stories about how they're living and executing the core value, how they're solving problems for the customer, how this job has helped them elevate their personal quality of life. And those are then being fed into our ads, the conversations that I'm having. I can now repurpose those stories in my talent acquisition. If I'm having to recruit and headhunt people, I'm able to leave little breadcrumbs and share those stories when in my messaging, or once I connect with that high value candidate, I can weave those stories into my conversation to get them from I'm happy where I'm at to, okay, I'm willing to have this conversation. And then most importantly, now who the engaged top performers are, those are the people who should be doing the interviews. Don't send those people to the people who are disengaged, the disengaged managers who hate their job, who don't like working here, who are angry for whatever reason, good or bad, and avoid putting a high value A player candidate in front of a toxic person. And then also the reality piece. So there are dysfunctions in all organizations, period. All relationships have dysfunctions. So find constructive ways to introduce those to your next A player. I'm hiring you to make this organization more functional, more constructive, to improve the culture, and lean into the challenge of that's why I'm hiring you to solve a problem. And that problem is the job I'm asking you to do, the results I'm asking you to produce, but also to improve our culture and the organization and the engagement in our organization. So are you on board with that challenge? If not, then I don't want you here.
Yeah, I 100%. And I also think it's important to realize the importance when you're talking about talent acquisition, the importance of hiring good versus a bad candidate can be devastating because if you have strong culture, if you have everyone's chugging along and you have a higher rates of engagement and you hire a couple bad hires on a team, that can be completely damaging. And trying to make a manager work with someone that was a bad hire to begin with, managing's difficult anyway. Managing good people can be almost impossible. So if you're now managing a couple bad hires or a third bad hire, and then the engaged employees start thinking these guys aren't working out, and I've told the manager a few times they're not working out. Oh, there's a job available at XYZ Corp. You're going to lose an engaged employee. You're going to lose a good employee because they don't like the road that the team is heading down. And so the whole tie with talent acquisition and employee engagement is completely circular. If you hire good people who are engaged and culturally aligned with your team, then that team, even if it's not as good as you want it to be, will become better. And if it's great, it's going to be just as great. But if it's bad, you're gonna maybe have a chance of changing the direction of that team by hiring good people.
And you can use those one-on-ones to help those bad players find their own way to the door.
Yeah. And the one-on-ones, I think
TA drives culture. People, they don't realize that people come in the door. We in TA and folks who work for us drive the culture, can drive engagement in things and try to hire people that are more highly engaged, which is harder to pull through and measure. But again, if we've got the right questions that we're being asked internally of A players, I can tell you from interviewing people, we've gone to our best salesperson said, what are you doing? What do you like about here? What would you change? You go to your top TA person, your top accounting, and each person in your organization to get those ideas for that. But I think having some type of survey gives a broader perspective to make sure that kind of feeds in, that other people are following that. Sometimes it's as simple as I come in and I do these 3 things every day. I come to my job with the attitude that my job in my world in TA, I make life better for the person coming in because hopefully I'm giving a better work-life balance and money. And within the company, I'm bringing in a better quality of individuals because everybody wants to raise the quality of talent. But I do know from being in these survey organizations that have used them, I guess from your perspective, Noah, how do you is there some things that you guys can do to make it not looks like this as, hey, we're just care once, like just a one hit? Is there initiatives that companies put in place that can drive, we're doing this as a culture thing?
Yeah, so our approach to measuring engagement is on 2 levels. One, ongoing, because your company is different in November and December, the hectic nature of the end of the year, than it is in April and May. It's different when during the winter, if you're in the Northeast like I am, versus the summer. Temperature, mood disorders, those things are real. So if you want to take a snapshot of what you are on December 17th, we have a survey that can help you accomplish that, one-off, a static event. But we really do champion the ongoing nature of shorter surveys. Longer surveys, you get survey fatigue. Longer surveys, it's more of homework. Our surveys take 10 seconds a piece to complete. So if you're doing 5 or 6 a month, you're talking about a minute of time. I saw something in the chat that I wanted to address about retribution. We don't go through the list of 100 people and say, these are your 35 people that are engaged and these 65 aren't. So go email the 65 and tell them to get with the program, right? Our surveys, we did a lot of research on anonymity and transparency in terms of assigning scores, whatever data you're collecting. Fletcher gave Noah this. Fletcher gave Mike this score. Our platform is completely anonymous, so there's no retribution. And I have had company executives call me and say, Mike's score is a lot lower than we thought it would be. Can you tell me who dinged him with lower scores? And I'm like, nah, I can't do that, because if you do it, one of the most important words in the world in any relationship is trust. Personal, professional, family. If you don't have trust, I can guarantee you don't have culture, or you have culture, but it's bad. If you don't have trust, you don't have retention. You're not retaining good people. Because if your good people don't trust their managers, their leaders, they're not staying. Especially in the world of Indeed.com and recruiting firms and talent acquisition firms and all the platforms available, it's never been easier to change jobs, especially if you're a good employee. So really figure out who those engaged people are and reward them. It's not about punishing the disengaged. It's about acknowledging, celebrating, and retaining those engaged people.
And it's the manager's job to figure that out, right? This data gives you a really solid clue. And then again, if you're doing like one-on-ones and you're having a good, healthy relationship with your team, then you're going to figure out who gave the bad review in a more constructive, non-punitive way, right? Because if I'm having the one-on, Noah's going to be like, I'm really having a hard time working with Michael. And here's why, and here's what's going on. And now I have a coaching moment, or maybe I'm gaining a bunch of you and 3 other people keep telling me you have a hard time working with Michael. And we're starting to uncover he's quite clearly a toxic employee, and we need to make some decisions about what to do about that, and pretty quickly, right? I think it begins, as you mentioned before, it highlights an issue that then leaders can then begin to dig into using the right tools and mechanisms as a leader.
And maybe not even waiting for that one-on-one. In a perfect environment, workplace environment, Noah goes to his manager, Fletcher, and says, Mike's not easy to work with, whenever that time is. If it's at 12:37 Eastern time on December 17th, so be it. He's not going to wait till next Tuesday's one-on-one. And the only way Noah's going to Fletcher to say that Mike's not easy to work with is if Noah trusts Fletcher to use that information in a way that's going to be proactive and successful. And guess what? 4 other people on my team might say that Mike's awesome. And then Fletcher uses all that data and says, maybe Noah is the issue and not Mike. But if you don't gather that information, you're never going to make better. You're never making objective decisions is what people want. Making data-driven decisions is what people want. They don't want Fletcher to reward Mike because they root for the same sports teams, or they like to ski, or they like to surf, or their kids are in the same soccer team, and that's all unintentional bias that exists in the workplace, right? They want this data so they know when Fletcher makes decisions, it's based on the feedback we've given him, whether it's through surveys or one-on-ones or however they interact.
And then you can use this story in the talent acquisition too. You can tell this story about how we use these employee engagement processes and how we lead and how we manage, and give a real life scenario about a problem and how we resolved it for that person who is leaving their current employer for toxic management and toxic environment, where their manager is avoiding these problems. We can say, this is how we deal with it here.
Yeah, question for you, Noah. Again, we're talking about engagement employees, but getting this information back, what do you see the action percentage of leadership responding to this and doing something with it? Because a lot of times I can tell you, I've been in organizations where you did these surveys and there were some really good questions. You're like, okay, they care, and then nothing changes. But what do you see going up the ladder with this information that produces any change?
It's a great question, and I've honed my sales calls to a couple initial questions, and that is, I'm on a Zoom with a team leader, and I say, okay, we're going to help you gather data. What are you going to do with it? Oh, we're gonna reward, and we're gonna incentivize, and we're gonna. Okay, that's great. That's if 90% of your people complete surveys and you love the data. I get it. What if you don't like the data? What are you gonna do with it? Because if everyone says I love working here, and they skip and they pick roses walking to the office, and they hand out birthday cards and cakes and all that kind of stuff, fantastic. You probably don't need engagement surveys. Usually companies that are looking to test and measure engagement have concerns about their levels of engagement. And so when you use the data, when you show your people that told you, one of the best questions in our surveys, in my opinion, is, I trust Mike, right? 1 never, 5 always. If you have a company average score of 4 or greater on that question, chances are your culture's pretty good. Because if everyone trusts everybody, that means they respect everybody and they want everybody to succeed, generally speaking. So when you look at the technology out there to gather it. Forget about 360s. 360s, you change the name, you change the date, you put them, you submit them in November so that everyone can do their annual reviews in December. That's a compliance exercise. If you're a dynamic company and you're a dynamic leader, you want to use data to drive decisions. And if you don't, and you want to say, we've always done it this way, we've done the annual review since the 70s because we've always done it that way. Okay, you're not going to want to use the data that I provide or there's a ton of players in this space. One of the things that drives anybody nuts is talk is cheap, talking about driving engagement, talking about using feedback, talking about driving and strengthening culture. Okay, that's fine because you read an Inc.com article on the importance of culture in the modern workplace. What are you doing to achieve it? And what are you showing your people you're doing to achieve it? And that's the struggle.
It's consistency. And at the end of the day, it's leadership, right? Michael's question is a difficult question to answer. It's not a difficult question. It's just really simple. The leader either cares about it or they don't. And if they care about it, they consistently act and leverage tools, demonstrate that they care about it, they demonstrate that they're listening, then they demonstrate action and can cite back the feedback and say, hey, we're going to do X, Y, and Z based on the feedback. So you're using the data to support the decisions that they're making. And that's just leadership 101 stuff, right? So the leader is either a leader or they're not. And if they're not going to use this and they're not going to be a fit, and there's nothing that we can sit here and talk about, period, about talent acquisition, about engagement, that matters. Those leaders are going to, twiddle their thumbs or bury their head in the sand. They're going to use ostrich, leadership strategies, and they're going to not embody what I would call founder. Those of you guys have been watching the latest kind of trends here, but Brian Chesky with Airbnb, has coined this new phrase of founder mode. I dropped a link to his talk about founder mode in hiring, which I think is very interesting. And I think it answers, Michael, your question and addresses what you're talking about, Noah, really well. So just as a side note, save that link, guys, and watch it while you're going to bed or whatever you do, or while you're in the car or whatever, driving home. It's amazing. And it all comes back to the leaders are hyper engaged and care a lot, or they don't.
Yeah. And I appreciate the feedback from both of you on that one, because it's, getting the surveys, acting on the surveys, getting those to TA to attract people better is good. And I appreciate both of y'all's input on this, because we've had this conversation together before, but I'm glad we're able to share this and iron out some better ideas on engagement and participation and utilization. I want to open it up to any Q&A for the folks that are here, but also I think we talked about this too, is I would like to put in the chat where people can try y'all's software, check out what Discovery AI is, check out what Ripple's about. I think giving some people how to try this, kick the tires a little bit. I know if people just will reach out to either one of these gentlemen, they'd be happy to talk to you about what they do and how they work, but also get a sampling of with the engagement of getting that information. Because right now, we all know that TA is about to get dropped with all the new budget for the new year, and hiring is going to open back up. So getting some information out of the organization is pretty helpful. But I was looking to see for Q&As here, see if anybody else has come in here. Just looking real quick. I think we answered the few that did come in. I guess since I don't have any questions coming through, what I'd like to have you guys do is, if you talk about how you see these surveys working for TA, and then Fletcher, if you could help by closing out where you see gathering information, how you would recommend TA uses it to attract people. So,
I would say showing candidates that your organization values feedback and they gather feedback regularly through monthly, quarterly, whatever the frequency is, surveys, that can be a differentiator between other companies that don't. They talk about, I've been on interviews years ago, we have strong culture here. Okay, saying that in your third interview, of course you're going to say that. What can you say to prove it? And I had a discussion with Glassdoor's president years ago. And I said, is Glassdoor, because, I'd been reaching out to their sales team, they didn't respond. And I was curious because you're all about feedback. Glassdoor is feedback, right? And I'm like, and your sales team isn't responding. They're not giving me feedback. It's okay to say not interested. And so I linked in, I sent a message to the president and he answered in maybe a day. And I said, is Glassdoor a platform that you want to provide employees a place to complain endlessly about how horrible their employers are? Or do you want this platform to work as a source of information so that employers can become better employers? And he said immediately, absolutely the latter, 100% the latter. We want employers to use this information to realize that all is not great and you can do something about it. So I think when you're talking about TA and companies that use a product like my product or competing products, TA can show their candidates, the candidates that they want to come work, that they don't just talk about culture and they just don't talk about engagement. They have a tool that they actually use. And in 2024, coming up on 2025, to not use technology and to not gather data really effortlessly is poor leadership. And you either have it, I mean, I agree 100% with Fletcher. Leaders, you don't become a great leader at 65. You have it in you or you don't. And you learn to be a leader one of two ways. I learned the second way. The first way is to have great leaders around you, great mentors, so that you know what the importance of the value of good leadership. The second way is how I learned from my second boss how not to lead. He was horrific, and he had Monday morning, weekly, 8:30 a.m. attorney meetings. 6 months they lasted. He attended 3. They were weekly, right? Horrible. So I decided from then on, no weekly meetings. Leadership is not something that you just put on your LinkedIn profile. You have it or you don't.
Yeah, I think making it easy I think the Glassdoor example is perfect. And again, you're curating that content on a regular basis, leveraging a tool like Ripple, right? And so you're being preemptive before it ends up on Glassdoor. You're learning about what the good and the bad are, leaning into the bad. And when anytime somebody gets a bad Glassdoor review, the first thing I say to them is, "We'll have a constructive response to that. Don't be defensive. Don't be argumentative. Don't sandbag. Don't bash the person. Have a constructive feedback on that." And again, you got to embrace that in the talent acquisition process. One of the questions that we do for like video testimonials is, what is one of the biggest challenges you're going to face as a new employee in this company? Like, we put that on a video and show that to candidates at the point of application, along with the good stuff. Like, here's our core values, and here's why we're great, and here's our mission, and here's who we're helping, and what problems we solve. But let's lean into what the challenge is, because again, there's two sides. One, let's acknowledge the challenge. Let's address clear, actionable ways that we're working to solve and to fix those, and then let's do those things. When we demonstrate, that's leadership, right? That's overcoming adversity. That's improving things. First and foremost, we just need to be honest and forthcoming about those things. Second, though, in the talent acquisition side, is somebody doesn't want to be part of our dysfunction, they shouldn't be here, frankly, just period. Like, if they're going to have ostrich head about this and realize and think that, oh, everything's perfect here and that you're not going to be a contributor to making it perfect, then again, you can't hire you. You cannot be part of my team if you're not willing to help us improve our culture, improve these challenges. And again, we're going to have an honest, transparent conversation about those things. And then, yeah, just technology to be able to get that message out, refresh it. So all the TA people out here know this. If you post an ad today, 30, and maybe in a week, the first week, you might get 100 applicants. In the second week, you might get 75. In the third week, you might get 50. And the fourth week, you might get 25. So there's a diminishing return on your content. So again, why I love Ripple is I'm getting fresh ammunition on a regular basis that I can then quickly, leveraging AI and tools like Discover, to just pump that, to refresh my content and my advertisements, to make hard citations, not just say our culture is great. I could say my culture is great because our employees said this and said that and said this and said that, and I can back it up with facts. So people who know me too, I only believe in leveraging facts and science-based strategies in IO or human development and talent acquisition. So everything we talk about is rooted in human science, something that is statistically moving the needle. And So again, we don't make fluffy statements that we can't back up with hard evidence, like testimonials, things that people actually said, or how our scores are on our employee engagement, what they really are. I'm going to show you they're 4.1, and we're not happy with that. And here's what we like about it, and here's what we don't like about it. And I'm hiring you to help me get closer to a 4.5, right? So just feeding the content machine, man, it's such a, it makes it so easy for us to do. Now it goes on social, it goes into my videos, it goes into my ads, it goes into my stories I tell when I'm dealing one-on-one with a candidate. And then I'm also dripping that in and throughout. So one cool case study on that, as I do a lot of work with CPAs and engineers, we drip multiple videos on cold candidates that have been sourced. So we've knocked on the door and said, hey, are you interested in leaving your firm and coming to this other firm? And so we share a video in the beginning. We share a video in the middle of the process. And when they're considering the offer, we drop another video. And I can't tell you how many times the candidate's been like, I was really on the fence, but you told me a story that was so compelling. I'm going to take this leap of faith.
Yeah, that's key to getting people on there. And I think, just to recap with Ripple, the anonymity, the small number of questions, the ability to be mobile where you're not doing on a work computer, because on your work computer, you feel like you're being monitored, even though they say you're not. So having that ability to get to the people outside of work where you hopefully get a little bit better and more true response is definitely what I need when I'm trying to attract people, because I really want to know what they think about the company, because we can all sing the happy song in TA. You know, we are the cheerleaders for the organization, and we know the good, bad, and the ugly, but it's better to know what the good is and how to attract the good and be able to have people walk in and actually experience that. Because I worked for organizations where they walked in and you're right, the culture is good. Or you walk in and go, you're right, I work 12 hours a day and I have no life depending on where you're at. But I appreciate both you guys coming in to do this on this Talk Talent platform. And there's a lot of TA leaders in here. I know they appreciate the information. I know probably some will do like I do and take and run with it, and hopefully reach out to you guys to see what you're about, because all of us using better tools to do our jobs better and better information is super critical. But I want to end a little bit of a show here, just because it looks like we don't have any more answers, but we still have about 20 some people in here, and hopefully they'll take advantage of at least looking at both your organizations. I know as a TA leader myself, my job is to hire people quickly, efficiently, and then get them to stay. And having the surveys does help people, because in TA, we know that if somebody leaves in less than a year, we really didn't do our job. Because once they're in a year, they're trained, they're productive, and that. So getting to know what they think and feel, other than the first 30 days when they're honeymoon phase, I want to see if their temperament of the organization changes as we go along.
Yeah, Mike, can I just share one thing that
Sure.
yeah, I think is imperative when you talk about technology and engagement and talent acquisition. And there's a generational workforce expectation. There's four key generations in the domestic workforce right now, right? The baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Zers. Millennials and Gen Zers, they expect this kind of interaction. They want it. They thrive on it. My generation learned from baby boomers, or learned from the greatest generation, where if you had a job and you had a paycheck and you had food on the table, that was a great place to work, right? Our expectations were a lot lower. If you don't respect, the millennials and Gen Zers comprise 66% of the domestic workforce. So if you're not giving them what they want, even if you don't maybe appreciate it as much, 68-year-old CEO of a company might not appreciate the importance of what we're all doing. But you have to appreciate what the expectations of 66% of your people are. And it goes to everything. Remote work. These companies that say, we're not even talking about doing any kind of hybrid remote. Why aren't you at least talking? Because Greg asked the question, if you have a boss that can't build trust, you're probably making bad decisions, so people don't trust your decision making, but you're probably making the decisions based on non-objective information because your old boss did it that way. So use technology to make life easier, to use technology to gather data and make better decisions so you can build that trust.
Well, yeah. And trust is a simple equation. Say what you mean and do what you say.
Yeah. Exactly right.
You might alienate some people in that process, but that's a good thing because those are the wrong people for that mission or vision. Find more people who believe what you say, and then you're buying in and you're backing up what you're saying, and that are excited about that vision. So that's leadership 101. And I think there's some folks that have a hard time with that, right? They have a hard time saying what they mean. They're just starting with step one, right? They're scared. They're scared to say what they mean. And yep. I get it. It can be scary. What if they don't like what I have to say? That's fine. Then find people who do.
Yep.
Exactly. Every job's a relationship. People have to understand. As soon as they understand, it's easier to hire people, and you want to know what people feel and think. And it definitely helps us out.
There's one of my favorite questions here, but interviewing techniques that help uncover candidates' intrinsic motivations. But I don't know. If we have time, I can answer it. But is that from you?
Yeah, a couple minutes.
My favorite trick in this one, it's not really a trick. It's very transparent and honest. Strategy here is you go through a career history interview. Noah, tell me about your first job, second job, your third job, fifth job, your current job, or in the job that you were in. Tell me about your progression in that job. What did you do? How did it evolve? What did your role do? What did you accomplish? So that's like ground fundamental stuff. Then it's, what did you love the most about that role? And what did you like the least about it? So it's a very open-ended question. You need to come back to you're going to answer that. And whatever you say, that's the thing that motivates you, and the thing that doesn't motivate you, that you don't like, that you're anti-motivator. And that question is very eye-opening because the person, let's say, I'll use an example, a salesperson. I love solving the customer's problem. I hated making 100 cold calls a day. Tells me a lot about that individual's personality, as well as, where they thrive and where they might fit the best into my environment. And depending on the sales role that I'm hiring for, I can now compare, or my core values or the mission and the vision, I can determine how well that person might fit. And that's where you're going to get the most honest feedback and answers. And then lastly, most importantly, references from previous supervisors. Period. I get a lot of flack on this one, but boy, it is the single-handed best strategy you can ever use if you're not religious about speaking to those past bosses before you make a hire. You're making a mistake every single time.
Definitely. Yeah, some people are motivated by praise, some are motivated by money, some are motivated by acknowledging them and who they are. Really, it can come down to a generational thing, Noah was saying. But we're at time, gentlemen. I appreciate you coming in. I'm glad that we're able to take our conversations we have and then put them out here so others can ask questions, learn a little bit about that. And again, y'all check out their companies, and hopefully we'll have something coming up soon. I do know that we will be announcing a live event in January in Atlanta. So if anybody's on here or in that area, we'd love to have you come by. We're going to have a day of sharing a lot of information for people, and some really good food too. But I'll put something out here in the next week or so for our January event, and look forward to talking and sharing with y'all soon.
Awesome. Thanks guys.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Fletcher. Happy holidays.
See ya.
Thank you all.